You can have this feeling anytime you choose.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So today we're going to go follow on in our series following the First Steps app. So once again, if you haven't downloaded that, download it on your smartphone or your tablet or something like that. We are going to be looking at a significant question today. The question of, if the good news about Jesus is so good, how can we share that with other people?
That's right.
So it's a topic that both Geoff and I are really passionate about, and we would love to share some things with you about that today.
That's right. It's actually good to see you again, Nick. It's been a few months since we recorded our last episode, and
new background,
new setting, and it's been an issue. This issue of sharing our faith that we've been thinking a lot about over the last few months, in particular, as we've been engaging with students on campus, and so I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring the experience that we have in thinking about this, just to help you as you take these first steps in following Jesus. Yep,
sounds good. So let's jump in. We are going to be looking. It's step number 4 in the little app, sharing about Jesus with others, and we're going to be looking at we're kind of discussing a passage from John chapter 4. So it's quite long. So if you at this point, if you haven't read the passage, please stop and read it because we're going to be referring to it a little bit. But Geoff, would you be just summarize it for us?
That's right. Yeah. So John chapter 4 is the story where Jesus is traveling through Samaria, and he's hot and tired, and he sits by the well. And while he's waiting at the well in the middle of the day, along comes a Samaritan woman, and he engages her in a conversation about what eventually leads to deep spiritual truths. And she comes to the realization that he is special, that he is the Messiah, and that realization changes her life. And so she runs back to her village. And when she gets to her village, she asks this explicit question, which he says, he told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? And so he comes to a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? And they came out of their town and made their way towards Jesus. And her testimony caused them to investigate who Jesus was, who Jesus is. And because of their investigation, they then came to put their own trust in Jesus themselves. And so her testimony led to other people coming to faith. That's the big idea from verses 1 to 42 of chapter 4.
Well done, Jeff's Cliff Notes to the Bible. Excellent. Helpful. Okay, so, I'm curious, Geoff, do you think most people, when they become a Christian or they have an experience with God that changes their lives, do they see an obvious need to share about that with other people?
Yeah, I've seen over and over again people who come to faith are really passionate about helping other people come to faith. That even the student this semester that I've seen come to faith, and immediately she's out sharing with her family, with her friends. Yeah. I think that for her the transformation, the difference that the grace and truth of the gospel makes is obvious to her, and the difference that it could make in the lives of others is also obvious.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's reflected in this passage as well. This woman has this really amazing experience with Jesus.
That's right.
And her first step is not like to go and think about it, or to read the Torah, which that's both good things. Her first step is like, guys,
that's right.
Come meet this guy who
that's right.
Told me all this amazing stuff. It's just it's instinctive.
That's right.
So at the same time, like I grew up, got in a church environment, and I guess my spiritual growth was slow. There were significant points, and as I journey with a lot of people in discipleship, I see that as well. That people who've grown up in a Christian environment, that evangelistic fervor isn't as instinctive.
That's
there.
Right.
What would you say, to those people like that, and how this applies to them?
Yeah, I think there's there is a biblical imperative for us to be witnesses wherever we are and whatever we're doing. And so, but I think that we can get comfortable in our faith, and we can get insulated from the people around us, and we're not convinced that the things that have made a difference in our lives are the things that can make a difference in other people's lives. And so I think if we've grown up in that kind of church environment, just as I did, we need to think about the biblical imperative, and then we need to think about our own journey and reflect on our own journey, not just from a Christian point of view, but from the perspective of, as we did in our first podcast episode, what is it that where did the gospel touch our lives and transform our lives? And as we think about the people around us, where's the opportunity for it to touch and transform the lives of people around us? Yeah,
that makes sense. So
it's not quite as instinctive. I think it's more intentional and reflective.
That makes sense. Yeah, I'm wondering if you could, I guess give us some examples of what that looks like, or I don't know, some ways that you found it effective or helpful as you've kind of reflected on your own experience with God, and then translating that into sharing that with others.
That's right. Yeah, I think one of the challenges for someone like me who grew up in a Christian family, where both of my parents are believers, and my line that, I've been going to church since before I was born, makes me feel different to the vast majority of the culture around me, where they say these days 60% of university students don't even have a friend who goes to church. So there's just a total disconnect in culture. But I'm, as a human being, I still have the same wants, desires, needs that they do. And so for me, I saw the gospel lived out. I heard the truth being taught. And that's what convinced me. It wasn't just that I was socialized into church, which is kind of the way that it's kind of expressed sometimes. Oh, you're only a Christian because you grew up that way. No, it's like I had an advantage that I heard the gospel taught and I saw it lived out that allowed me to make that decision early. But there is a truth. Something is true or it's not true. And so I can tell you from my experience that I've found that this is something that's true and that works. And I would encourage other people to explore this, join in a Christian community, see grace and truth lived out, and then read the Bible for yourself and determine for yourself whether it's true. Just because I had a head start doesn't mean that, it's not true.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, wondering if you could share with us about an experience that you've had doing that in, when you're at university. Do you remember? Maybe a little while ago.
It was a little while ago. And I think I'd just say that for somebody who's just come to faith, I think the reason why it's easier for them is because usually the sorts of people they're hanging around are people who are very similar to them. So where the gospel resonates in their life, whether that's a search for identity or meaning or purpose or acceptance or love, they're things that are likely to resonate in the lives of people around them. Whereas, in our university campuses these days, and increasingly in our large cities, we have incredibly diverse cultural backgrounds. And so sometimes you meet people who are really different to us. They come from a different religious background or a different social background. And so the things that have resonated with me actually aren't resonating with them. And that's where I think after we get through this testimony level, that's where it starts to pay dividends to even be more reflective, engage in some training. Power to Change offers so much training for people. What training does is it helps you take your experience, reflect on the principles of it, and apply it in a new way, so that you're actually serving the people that you're meeting. Right, and I think, but for someone who's just starting, if you're just starting to follow Jesus and you're reading this passage, the encouragement is that the people who are around you are probably very similar to you. And all you need to do is say, this is what made a difference in my life.
No, that's great. I remember from my experiences as I was a teenager and going through youth group and getting into towards the end of high school. I had a couple of friends who I was just naturally friends with at school, and they didn't come from Christian backgrounds. And I just invited them along to youth group and stuff like that. And through my friendship with them, as I reflect back on the experience, I was like, I did not know what I was doing in terms of like trying to share my faith. They were my mates, and I was just trying to kind of reach out to them, and we'd have these big conversations sometimes as they started to really think about, what do I believe? As you kind of go through that transition of forming your own identity at the end of your teenagerhood. And so over a process of a couple of years, both of them become Christians and are still walking with God today, which is amazing.
That's right.
And I think back, like right now, I'm way more trained and have a lot more kind of like skills in terms of sharing my faith.
That's right.
But I wouldn't say I'm any more effective in terms of being. You can't replace that just journeying with people, sharing out of your own experience. That's the core of what it means to share Jesus with other people.
That's exactly right.
So,
yep, and I would say the same thing when I was in high school and university. I had a friend in the neighbourhood. He was at James Roos, one of the elite selective schools. Right. He dropped out of school at 15, was working as an apprentice. Right. Got caught up in the drug culture, but he and I were best mates. It was like total oil and water, like opposites. Yeah. But we just, God placed a love for him in my heart, and we hung out. When he went off to drug rehab center, I ended up going away for the weekend and catching up with him. And eventually, he came back to faith, but it was a long journey in his case, and just engaging him in community, because for him it wasn't the intellectual side of the faith that was the issue. It was about that sense of love and acceptance, and our church community was able to provide that. So
that's great. Well, we hope you found that helpful. Hope you found that somewhat informative. Again, we'd love it if you would journey along with us as we progress through these steps in terms of growing in your relationship with Jesus and becoming someone who is impactful for building the church and building his kingdom. That's right. So, we're going to be looking at another topic next time. So stay tuned and
hit subscribe.
That's right.
and feel free to share the videos with other people as well. Just one final thing: when we're thinking about this, as you try to talk about Jesus with other people, what you learn is that you learn the gospel better yourself. You come to understand the gospel better yourself. You grow in your own relationship with God as you're seeking to explain the gospel to other people. And we're going to talk next episode about other things that are important for us as we're growing in our relationship with God.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
See you then.